As I'm sure you guys know, I absolutely love Dell's XPS 15, and even though this thing is living on a tiny bit more, it has been replaced, and its replacement is a bit complicated. Let's have a look at the new Dell XPS 16 and its decisions. All right, we've got a black box here. There it is. Let's go beneath it for a second. Dell is still including a dongle with their laptops right here. I do like to see that because everyone else that's like, oh, we took away your I/O, but at least we gave you a dongle. They all stopped giving you dongles, but Dell fortunately has kept with it. This is all paper, so I do enjoy seeing that. Plug it in, hit the power button. There you go. For charging, we have a 130 watt brick, and that's being delivered over USB Type-C. Ooh, oh. I just picked it up to take off this. It looks nice, but man, this thing is heavy. Let's get at the scale. For comparison, I have the XPS 15 here. That is 4.37 pounds. Not light, but somewhat acceptable. I also have the Zephyrus G16, 4.2, pretty good, pretty good. And now the new XPS 16, 5 pounds. Yeah, this thing, you pick it up and it is heavy. Now, why is this so heavy? Because glass. I really liked on the old XPS 15 how a lot of it was made out of carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is a great material for a laptop because it is light. Another really good material for laptops also is magnesium. You see lots of laptops using that these days. Do you know what's not light? Glass, and lots of it. Here we have glass all along here, glass all up here, extra thick Gorilla Glass up here, and that all means that this thing right here is going to be hurting your back if you have it in your backpack for a while. In fairness, I should be comparing this to the XPS 17 maybe, because that was a bit more comparable. Maybe 2 millimeters thicker than the old XPS. But also, why compare to the old XPS 17 when we have a new Asus G16, which is way more comparable? It's maybe exactly the same thickness. Now, seeing that they're the same thickness and the G16 has things like Type A, full-size SD card reader, and HDMI, what can we find on the XPS? Well, it's pretty similar to the old one in that it kind of sucks. So on the left, we have 2 Thunderbolt 4s, and on the right, we have just USB Type-C, headphone microphone combo jack, and a micro SD card reader, which I hate. Dell says that this right here is acceptable because it is as fast as a micro SD card reader can be in a laptop, but at the same time, when I'm doing photography stuff, my camera does not have a micro SD card. It has a full-size SD card, and it was so nice to be able to just go out and do a bunch of photos and then come back in, chuck it right in here, have it immediately go into Lightroom, wonderful stuff. I do feel like I was a lot more optimistic 4 years ago when the old XPS 15 came out that we would just all be switching to USB Type-C. But now, for whatever reason in 2024, we feel almost further away from that than ever. It is pretty though. It is really pretty. I have to give them that. It's almost as pretty as our sponsor. All right, Bell, what does dbrand have for me?
This is dbrand's new Hydro Dip Skin. It comes in 5 different colorways.
Why didn't we just use this one? This looks awesome. So is this a skin or is it actually hydro dipped?
So it is just a skin. I mean, they just make
okay.
expensive stickers.
Yeah.
And they're actually not making it for laptops.
What?
But they do have it for phones.
Oh, fancy. So we've got all of the colors right here. We've got Solar Flare, Cotton Candy, Bubblegum, Toxic Waste, and Gold Rush. It's available for smartphones right now, but sadly, not for laptops unless you are bros with dbrand. But if you want it for laptops or gaming consoles or handhelds, you should go and just bug dbrand on Twitter. Get them mad.
Maybe they'll give you $10,000.
Yeah, maybe they'll give you $10,000. Now, there's almost no way that I'm going to be able to show you what I am seeing. But the problem that I have is that there's just, it looks like dirtiness. So you have the digitizer for the touchscreen, and that has to be overlaid over the pixels that display your stuff. And the problem is that a lot of LCDs have different subpixel layouts than the OLEDs. So you can have that digitizer somewhat blocking the subpixels of your OLED screen, and it creates kind of like a dirtiness. Now when I'm back here where I'll mostly be using the laptop, it's fine. But if I get into about right here, I am able to see that digitizer over top of the OLED subpixels, so the whole thing just looks kind of dirty. Future Alex here. We were having some trouble with the display, but an update has solved that and it is now absolutely fantastic, digitizer aside. Now one thing that's a little bit strange is we have Dell Premiere Color and we also have my Dell. They both choose different modes and stuff, and they will compete against each other and make things bad. So just choose one of them. But once you've done that, it is absolutely fantastic. In SDR, we measured 390 nits peak brightness for the whole window, which is excellent. And even better, we had an average delta E of 1.6, which means that you could very easily use this for professional photo work. At the same time, in HDR, it goes up to 630 nits peak brightness on the whole panel, 100% window size. That is frickin' fantastic. And also it has really good color accuracy as well, with an average luminance error of 17.4 and an average, the other one of 6.9. I honestly don't understand HDR metrics. Labs results aside, this is also just a fantastic panel. It is 3840 by 2490 Hertz. So even though it is a little bit dirty from that digitizer, it looks really freaking good, and I do really appreciate that it's an OLED with a touchscreen. We don't get a whole lot of that. Also for power saving, it will go down to 48 Hertz, but we do not have G-Sync on this. So let's go to one of the other controversial bits of this laptop, the keyboard. The keyboard's fantastic. It is a little bit strange with the zero lattice layout that they have here, but the way that it's dished makes it pretty easy to find your keys. I haven't had too many problems with the layout. Like I've seen people complain about the backspace being over here. I haven't had any issues with that. And overall, I think it is really good. Like I'm going to give this a solid A, and I'm going to downgrade it to an A- or maybe a B+. Because of up here. So we very sadly do not get actual function rows and instead have to deal with this bad touch bar knockoff. We first saw this on the Dell XPS 13 Plus, and I'm very sad that it's made its way over here. In particular, the most egregious thing here is the escape key. There's so many times where you're just doing a thing and you go boop, and with no physical button here, it's much easier to just miss it. You'll hit there, or hit there, hit there, or something like that. It's just nowhere near as accurate or generally good as a physical button. The rest are okay-ish. I just want buttons, guys. Is it really that hard? Below that though is the touchpad, and this is controversial, but at the same time, I don't think it should be because it is really, really good. We can see that it starts right around there-ish and ends around there, and you might suspect that you'll have problems finding it, but it's so big that I have never had that problem. It's force touch, so it has little piezo's below it that measure the force and give you a little when you click it in, and it works really nice. The tracking is super accurate. I've had no problems with the palm rejection, and overall, I just think it's a really good touchpad. But back to the other glass covered bit. On the Dell XPS 13 Plus, where we very first saw this capacitive layer up here, I gave it a little bit of a pass because that was the fastest 13-inch notebook. Dell says that they use these capacitive touch buttons so that they can have more room for cooling and just more power. And on the XPS 13 Plus, they did that. It is the fastest 13-inch notebook, but this right here, is it the fastest 16-inch? Well, let's have a little look at the specs. That's not escape. There we go. So for performance, we get an Intel Core Ultra 7 155H, 32 gigabytes of RAM running at 7467 megatransfers per second, a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, Intel Wi-Fi 7, love to see that. Got an NPU for AI boosting crap, and also an RTX 4070. Now in this 4070 version right here, we have a vapor chamber for cooling, and on the 4060 and lower, you get some heat pipes. Now going back to our whole capacitive buttons, give us the most power. We don't get that here. So the RTX 4070 in this sadly only gets 60 watts of power dedicated to it, and the total system power is 80. Comparing that to this laptop, which has inconvenient things like a function row, has 85 watts dedicated just to the GPU, and this also comes with a 4080 version, which can go up to 95 watts on the GPU. So the XPS 16 is not the fastest 16-inch laptop, by a lot. We did compare these two laptops, and it might seem a little bit unfair to have the 4070 version of the XPS 16 and the 4080 version of the G16, but we did that because they are price comparable and also like they both have OLED panels. So I think it is pretty fair, and yeah, turns out a 4080 is way freaking faster than a 4070. Absolute shocker. Looking at it in Cyberpunk, 106 FPS on the Asus, 81 on the Dell, F123, Asus 157, XPS 118, Total Warhammer 9360, so it's not looking too good. Oh, I'm so sorry, Dell. Alright, even though this is not the most performant gaming laptop in existence, because it's not a gaming laptop, shocker I know, it should still be really good. Oh, here's our good friend Paul. Okay, we need to, damn it! No escape key. You're going to want to turn it down to like 2560 by 1600 because it can't quite do 4K, but looking at this here, we're getting a pretty solid 60 FPS, and I've seen it go up to 90 or so in Valheim. So that is really quite good given the settings that we have, but that is at that 1600p and not at the 4K that you really, really want. The 4070 just cannot do that high of a resolution. That said though, panel extremely responsive. You can just whip around right here. So I do think that you can very easily be gaming on this PC and have quite a good time, just as long as you don't expect to be doing full 4K gaming in modern games. And just as long as you don't want to be able to easily hit escape. Now Dell says the speakers on this are the best that they've ever made. 4 speakers, 10 watts, and apparently it's really good. Future Alex again. So we tested the speakers on this guy, and it turns out they aren't very good. And that's because they're blown from the factory. Quality control, probably still getting worked out very early in production here, but fortunately, Dbrand sent us one, and it is just fine. So let's have a little crab reef here. All right, that sounds a lot cleaner than before. That's pretty good. That's pretty darn good. That's really loud. I'm talking very loud right now. But one thing that I've noticed that's interesting is that the sound profile kind of changes depending on the volume. You get a lot more bass like around here, and then I think that dynamic range compression is kind of removing it way up here. Like it's way more trebly now, a bit more screechy at full volume. Stop. Stop. But can it compare to the MacBook 14? All right, Dell XPS 16, MacBook Pro. Oh, I think the MacBook wins. The Dell definitely got a little bit louder, but it was kind of shouty when it was at full volume, whereas the MacBook sounds a lot more just balanced in general. All right, now one area that Dell has said that they've vastly improved this laptop is the webcam, and it looks like they are very correct there. Looking at this right here, we're at 1080p, moving around. It's exposing for my face really well. Oh, it's not there. Direct light, maybe not. But the second that we go right there, it has figured it out, moving around. It's figuring all of this out really well to expose for my face. And as long as you're not like pointing it at the sun, it seems like you're going to have a pretty good time overall. So good job there, Dell. You finally made a webcam that's good. 8 T5 screws later, and we are in, and we can see this vapor chamber that we have right here, which does a decent job. It does an okay job. Not the best job, not the worst job. Why did they need to do the function row? Like, we only have actual cooling fins here and here, which, like, there's almost some space over here where they could have some cooling. Lots of laptops do. But mostly just like, why the f do I have to have that stupid capacitive touch button if there's not going to be heatsink in there? Like, it's clearly not for cooling if all of this is not cooling stuff. I just do not understand it. Like, this would be so much of a better laptop if they're able to get like another 25 watts out of the GPU, but they just haven't. Also very disappointing is that Dell took a whole bunch of time to create a compression attached memory module. So that allows you to have a super thin, super fast, replaceable memory on your laptop. So you can have something that's nice and slim, but at the same time, still upgradable. Not here. RAM soldered down. Very sad, and it looks like our Wi-Fi card is as well. Now, one area that they have vastly improved, the Dell XPS 16 though, is in battery life. This new generation of Intel chips has proven that they are fantastically efficient compared to the old ones. And when you pair that with a 99.5 watt hour battery and the fact that OLED technology on laptops has progressed to where it's not too much of a battery hit, this thing is great. We were able to get 12 hours out of it in our endurance test. Fan-frickin-tastic. Now let's do our double-sided SSD test. Chuck it in here. You might want to get a different thermal pad for right here. This seems a tiny bit thick, but that is a really easy replacement, and there's nothing that I can see below. Yeah, there's nothing below it. So just replace this thermal pad with one that's slightly thinner, and you are all good for a double-sided SSD in here. So the Dell XPS 16, I do feel like I've been a little bit hard on it, maybe a little bit too hard on it, but there is a good reason. The price. This thing starts at $1,900 US, and that does not get you a dedicated GPU, and that also gets you a 1200p display without touch. So just to kind of get in the door, you need to do an extra $400 for this OLED panel, which just makes it like an acceptable panel for a laptop in this price range. And then, what's this one?
$3,400.
This one is $3,400. Ouch. It's a sort of thing where I can accept the compromises of this weird capacitive thing and the glass down here if it was obscenely fast. If this thing just walked over other laptops, maybe we could accept it. But this thing makes a MacBook Pro seem reasonably priced. This thing right here, you can buy a razor blade that is similarly spec'd for less money. I don't know, Dell needs to go and just figure some stuff out, because with the I/O and the performance of this thing, it's very, very hard to recommend. I'm sorry, guys. So huge thanks for watching, guys. Hit like, get subscribed, and just have a great old day. See you later.